Hello and welcome, everyone. I am Briar Harvey. This is the Neurodiversity Media Network. Today, we are here with the fabulous Haley Shane, who said to me just 30 seconds ago, I think I hate the word branding. Since the
do.
name of this show is Brand Wild, I feel like you owe me an explanation.
I hate what the word has turned into.
Okay.
I got an email and it was like, "Hey, we need help with our branding." And I'm thinking it's a business, blah blah blah. They're like, "We're starting a YouTube channel." I'm like, "So you need a cover photo? Stop calling this branding. It's a cover photo and a profile picture. You don't need branding. You need fucking Fiverr."
Yeah. Branding is much more than that. And we've talked, I think, quite a bit about what a brand actually is. But why do people have a difficult time connecting the strategy to the assets?
I don't even think that it's that. I don't even think most people realize that strategy is a thing. I think that there is a generation of new entrepreneurs that have heard the word branding from the time that they were in the womb from everyone, and they think that it's this super important thing, and if I reach out to somebody and I use the word, they're going to know that like I'm this super important. No, you need graphic design. That's what you need. You don't have money. You are starting a YouTube channel. You're probably not going to be consistent with it. You need to go to Fiverr and you need to hire somebody to make you a header photo. You don't need branding. You can't afford it.
I mean, arguably, you can head on over to Canva all by yourself
And just
and
make
make
some
that
shit.
header photo yourself.
Yeah.
But it's not just branding. There's a disconnect about the elements of business entirely, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I almost feel bad bitching and saying that it's just branding because, like, I know copywriters have the same issue, marketers have the same issue, people that run ads have the same issue, web developers have the same issue. So, like, it's not just like, oh, poor pitiful me and my job or whatever. But um, obviously, that's all I have experience with, so that's all I can talk about. But
It's the fundamental understanding of what goes into a business. And ironically, I think that it's because the people who sell the internet online business get rich quick scheme have such impeccable branding.
and I don't honestly, most of them do, yeah, but they talk about branding a lot and they're like, "Oh, you got to have your branding. Look at my cover photo." And so they're the ones really perpetuating this thing. So then of course this fucking 20-year-old kid hits me up and is like, "Hey, I need branding." And I'm like, "Cool, that'll be $7,000." Because I'm thinking about it, what it actually is. I'm thinking it's strategy, and we're going to need a ton of assets, and there's a ton of design work, and logos, and brand identity, and color palettes, and typefaces, and you know, user journey mapping, and like all of this shit. And I'm throwing out this huge number. I mean, to a 20-year-old kid, that's a huge number. And they're like, "Whoa, I just need a cover photo." And it's like, okay, well, then say you need a cover photo. Or give me 7 grand and let's do this the right way.
Well, they can't afford you.
No.
But there is an implicit lack of understanding about what this looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, a huge misunderstanding.
All right, well, Haley, fix it.
I'm trying. I've if you've noticed though, in my personal branding and stuff, in my cover photo, I've gotten away from using the word branding. I've gotten away from using the word brand strategist. It's just creative now. It's just anything that's within that realm. That's branding, if that's brand strategy, if that's design, if that's video, if that's whatever, is kind of the direction that I'm
Well,
going in.
creative is a department,
Hmm.
and that sounds more expensive.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Like, it definitely is. But like, this was kind of something that I had. It was one of those weird. The universe is showing you things like, "Hey, you big dumbass! Like, will you pay attention?" Um, I have, and I've talked about this client before. Clay, the book author, I did these stickers for. Um, we have like a rev share thing worked out, because he's an author and so his income is like crazy up and down. But it was a project that I really wanted to work on, and I knew that I could help him out, and I knew that I could make products that people would buy, and it would benefit us both to do so because he's got a gigantic audience. He just needs help kind of getting money from them. I'm really good at that. I don't have a huge audience, so it worked out, and we worked some things out. And so that happened, and then I had somebody approach me that was like, "Hey, I really need a creative partner. I don't need a designer. I need a creative partner. I need somebody that can steer a ship in a certain direction, and I'll throw money at it to make it go in the direction that it needs to go. Like, can you be that person?" And we talked about it. And I was like, "Yeah, cool." Again, physical products, merch stuff like that. And then I had somebody hit me up about wanting to do like a rev share thing. Instead of paying me like retainer, we do a rev share and they just get access to me and any ideas that I have, design work, it's everything. And so this happened 3 times in I think the span of like 2 days. And so finally I was like, okay, I get it. Like, I get it. Just do all the creative stuff. Do, all the ideas. Because it's this constant, I kind of hate not being on retainer for most people because, okay, I had a crazy, just amazing like idea for a shirt design the other day while I was on a walk. Like, I got this idea and I was like, holy shit, why has nobody done this before? Like, this will kill it. Immediately had to stop, typed it in my phone, like in my notepad, came back, designed it. I sent it to Clay and he was like, I think I posted his reaction on Facebook. It was like, holy sweet baby Jesus, that's hot. Like, and he said the same thing. He was like, that'll sell out. Like, that's fucking, he was like, how has nobody ever done that before? And I was like, I don't know. I just thought about it like on my walk and like came back. It took me an hour, but I did it. And, but I'm getting ideas like that for every client that I have, every single one. And so
Right, because it's
it,
a process.
yeah, it is. It's not like, okay, hire me and like, here's all of this stuff. It's like, no, it takes me some time sometimes. Like I went to the gym for a little bit today and was watching a video about like just the creative spirit. And it was like, it's not this rigid like taskmaster that you can tell to do things. It's a companion and it's going to go and it's going to do what it wants to sometimes. And you just have to let it. And like, it's a really good way to describe it because that's really what it is like you just kind of have to let it go and then it'll come back when it comes back. So, and you don't always get to choose when that is.
No, we don't own ideas and they don't really belong to us. And if we don't act on them, they go somewhere to someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So, part of this then is that the visual imagery of a brand is constantly in evolution, which seems makes perfect sense to me now that
I
you've
think
said this.
that's a great thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But what does that mean for people who don't like the uncertainty of that evolution?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can. It's easy to pick branding and design and all of this and stick with it. If you don't want it to change and you don't like that constant evolution, yeah, pick something and stick with it. That's what we used to do. You know, you used to pay $5 million for a logo because you had to use it for the next 30 years.
Right.
But we don't have to do that anymore. You can have 9 different versions of your logo that are more artistic. They still work as logos in the mediums that they need to work in and all of that, like they're locked up well and all that shit, but you can have just a sheet of logos and you just use them however you want. And you pay maybe a couple $1,000s for that
Right.
instead of
Or
a couple
you
of
can
million.
get them from the AI for free. I believe we've talked about how bad AI generated logos are.
Yeah,
But
horrible.
horrible, but also a place to start, a place to build from if you have nothing, rather than coming to you and saying, I need a
If you
brand.
if you have no tool to visualize. I thought that everybody had this for a long time, by the way. I thought everybody had the creative ability to like see something in their head and at least vaguely create something that look it
No.
took me a long time to realize like most people don't have that at all. Like most people if you say, "Hey, imagine an apple," they imagine the word.
Hmm.
Like me, I imagine it in realism and I can taste it a little bit. Like
Right.
and it took me a long time to realize like most people are not like that. So it's great if you're one of those people that doesn't have that kind of brain. You can enter in words and say, "Hey, I want, a frog logo like this."
Although I would argue that it takes that level of ability to see and verbalize to be able to make tools like Midjourney
Mhm.
work,
It does. It definitely
because
does.
they don't just take the words and smack down on paper what you
No,
want.
and you do need if you want it in like a certain style or something like that, you have to be able to explain that. And this is something that I constantly have to do with clients is obviously they're coming to me because they don't understand this design stuff. And so when they show me like, hey, we really like this, I'm like, oh yeah, that's modern. Oh yeah, that's retro. Oh yeah, that's like kind of cyberpunk or whatever. It's up to me to be able to discern. Okay, well they want this sort of stuff. I had this with a client that I'm working with now. I'd done stylescapes, which are basically mood boards that you send them before you start designing anything. You go over it together, and that kind of gives me a direction. Like, okay, we're going to go in this direction. That way, I don't design a ton of shit and come back to them, and they're like, "Whoa, we don't like any of this." So, stylescapes prevent that. But I'd done. We had done this. We had this meeting, and I did like a pretty modern logo, and they were like, "We like it, but it's too. It's just. It's not. We don't know. It's too flat. Can you add this and add this and add this and add this and do this? And we want this in a different color." And I'm like, whoa, hold up. We're not. First of all,
We're
we
not doing
can't
that.
add we can't all add all that stuff to a logo. This is why we have a logo and this is why it needs to be simple. And they were cool. They're great clients, by the way. And they're like, okay, we got it. Didn't know that. Like, cool. Thank you for telling us. So that was awesome. But what I realized is what they actually meant was the logo's too perfect. They wanted it roughened up a little bit. They wanted some texture. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I tell them that. I'm like, I think actually what you're saying is this. And they were like, yeah, that makes sense. Can you show us what that looks like? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And so I do a couple of versions of the logo that are kind of gritty and have like this texture on them. And they've got like chunks missing out of it. And the way I'm describing this makes it sound ugly. It's not. But I showed them that and they're like, yeah, that's better. Like, we don't want this. We don't want the brand to look like clean and like perfect. So but it's up to me to be able to do that. But if you're doing this with AI, if you don't understand stuff like that, like you don't understand, oh, I want texture because this is too smooth. It's hard to get the results that you want anyway.
I think there's a lot of kind of false outrage over especially the digital components of AI and the ability to make visual imagery,
Hmm.
because people are afraid that they're going to be replaced, but it still takes a lot of skill to use these tools.
Yeah, it does. It does. And that is, and I kind of pride myself on being one of these people that can hold two opposing opinions at once. And so there are parts of AI that I like. There are parts of AI that I do not like. The one thing that I definitely don't like is within a week of this shit coming out, being told, like, you're going to lose your job. I hope you lose your job. Shut the fuck up. Don't wish that. I don't care if you think AI is great and you think it's the future. That's awesome. Stop hoping that people lose their jobs. You're a fucking asshole. It's the exact same thing that I saw with crypto. All of these people
Oh
got into
God.
crypto, which, by the way, the percentage of crypto bros and AI bros is like a perfect fucking circle.
Oh
Um,
yes.
yeah, because they've grifted from one thing to the next. But I saw this so bad with crypto when it first started getting popular. All of these people got on their fucking high horse about crypto, and when people would ask about it, they'd be like, "Oh, you mean you don't know about this like super obscure fucking thing on MetaMask?" Like, shut up and educate people about it if it's so fucking awesome. Stop wishing that like the dollar is going to collapse. Like, do you know what happens when that happens?
They neither know nor care.
No, I don't think they know, and they don't care to know. They want like Bitcoin's the future. Venezuela's using it now. Like, yeah, look how that
Look
turned
how well
out.
that's going.
Yeah.
Look at crypto in general now.
Yeah, this was this crypto conversation was years ago, and now they shut the fuck up, and you didn't hear any of them. And then when Chat GPT, it was like they all came out of the woodwork, and now they're AI experts. Like, this is the future, and it's gonna steal everybody's job. And I'm like, I think I've heard this before.
I think I've heard this before a few times. Prompt generators. And it's so funny to me because being able to prompt the AI is not a skill anyone should be specializing in, because
No,
large language models will not last in their current iteration. There'll be
no, they will
something
change.
new
That's the whole
soon.
point of them. That's the
Right.
entire point of them, is that they evolve and that they change. And don't get me wrong, listen, I'm not like AI is bad, never use it. Listen, I'm an Adobe user. I've been using that shit for 10 years.
Hmm.
Adobe Sensei's been doing stuff behind the scenes. We just now know about it. They've just now come out and said, "Oh yeah, Sensei's been powering all of this stuff forever." Remove background tool, please God, like give me shit like that. That's AI all day.
All day.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to sit there and pin tool out shit and then cut the background out like you used to have to back in the fucking good old days of CS3, because that's how old I am.
I think there is real overlap here, though, between the issues of AI and branding, because we are visually very compelled by that story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, what it's not really about keeping your job, because that, as we agree, is mostly irrelevant. How do we reframe this story then?
The story of what AI is gonna
Yeah, the
supersede
story of
everybody.
AI is going to take your job, branding is irrelevant. Like, how do we tell a different story here?
Yeah. I I think much like AI is evolving, I think all of these other industries, I don't think they're going to go away, and I think it's ignorant to think that, but and maybe even a little narcissistic on the part of these AI experts. But I think any industry where AI is going to be maybe not even prominent, but some part of it, I think those industries are going to evolve to incorporate it. Um, I think branding will evolve to incorporate AI. I don't worry about that. I'm not like, no, we have to keep doing it like we used to. Like, it's the same thing we just talked about. Like, I think it's great that you don't have to spend $5 million on a logo and never change it for, 30 years. I think it's awesome that we don't have to fucking do that anymore. To me, it's cool that you can get a sheet of logos for like, 6, 7 grand and use them in any fucking thing. And so I think AI, much like that, it'll be kind of this iteration and it'll evolve and we'll see what piece it plays in different industries and stuff like that. And then hopefully it'll raise all those industries up. I don't will it take some people's jobs? Yeah, maybe like, data entry, stuff like that, maybe.
I think the threshold for me personally is, does anyone actually enjoy that job? Do they benefit personally from doing that job? If they had the
Yeah.
most incredible boss ever, would they continue to do that job? And if the
Yeah.
answers to those questions are no, then by all
That
means,
was a job
let the
worth getting rid of.
robots
Yeah.
replace them. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree. I saw a post on Facebook today though somebody was talking about like their sister who's like 18, 19 years old, like very young, is thinking about getting into like drop shipping or something like that because she thinks that AI is going to take her job. And everybody was like, "What does she do?" And they were like, "Oh, she's a waitress." And I'm like, "There's no chance. I mean, if you don't want to be a waitress anymore, like fuck it. Yeah, go learn drop shipping." But like AI is not going to take that job.
No. And we have so much visual evidence because South Korea has been trying to replace those kinds of jobs with
Yeah,
robots
and it's
for
went horribly
many
wrong.
years. It's gone
Mhm.
horribly wrong. And the robots still require human supervisors.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, could you imagine if you went to like like a Michelin star restaurant and they fucking like Jetsons looking robot like brought you your 9 course meal? You'd be pissed. You would be pissed that you spent that much money. Yeah,
Oh,
you want a person.
absolutely. And I think that is what I wish that more people would recognize is that what's changing is the experience. So I talk a
Mhm.
lot about this restaurant here. We have a French restaurant here that serves a tasting menu. It's $90 per person. They're open 4 days a week because it's $90 a person. You're
Yeah,
not
they don't need to
showing
be
up
open
on
more.
Monday or Tuesday, and you're not showing up on Monday or Tuesday for $90 a plate.
No.
So they're open 4 days a week. I think one of those days is a half day that's mostly prep, like, but everyone's paid well within this model to be able to work 4 days a week
And survive, yeah.
and survive, because again, it's $90 a plate, but I'm willing to pay that because it's an experience. It's
Mhm.
French, it tastes good, it's a whole thing.
It's
So,
exotic, like,
right,
yeah.
in Omaha, Nebraska. Like,
Right.
the point is that we get to cultivate that kind of experience if we choose, and it's choosing a different way. We've talked a lot, not just on this show, but you and I in the past, on the ways in which branding gets to shape your identity in this
Mhm.
regard. Say more about how we're going to be using branding in the future to determine experiences.
Yeah, and I think it goes really just deeper into identity. It, honestly, because we've talked about like how you have a personal identity, and if you meet a person for the first time, you kind of make some assumptions about them based on certain things about their identity, whether that's the personality that they have or the way that they dress, the way that they talk, whatever. You kind of start to form opinions about that person and whether or not that's actually who they are, or if that's just something that they put on around people is, up to them really. But I think the the experience thing is you have the identity part of it that's like getting to know somebody the first couple of times, and then the experience is like beginning to form some sort of relationship with that person, like actually being friends and like having a deep connection. I think that's the experience version of that, just to give that example. I think the experience is going to be the same identity, it's just going to be going a lot deeper into it.
And there's value in really leaning into and claiming that now.
Hmm. Yeah, I think so. Because and we've talked about this before too. The internet taught us that these weird little niche things that we like and we thought that only we liked and we were weird for, turns out a lot of other people out there um, like this. I don't know if I've um, brought this up before, but I constantly rewatch shows that I've seen because I want background noise that I don't have to pay attention to. And I was rewatching Orange is the New Black, and there's this scene where they're talking about like people on the internet. They're like, man, nobody's weird anymore because the internet showed you that like if you're in love with toasters and want to have a love affair with a toaster, like there's somebody else out there that wants to too. Like it's, we used to be in these little contained bubbles before the internet, and it was like, man, that guy likes toasters, he's super fucking weird. But like now there's like 3 other thousand people that fucking have a love affair with their toaster. Like you're not weird anymore. And so that has shown up, and we know that now because of the internet, but we're going to expect that in person now. We want those kind of niche experiences, right? Yeah.
So we I think the issue though is that people are uncertain how to define those experiences without a lot of copy.
Yeah.
That
So,
we can't see them, and so we
mhm.
can't define them.
Yeah, and this is something that I have struggled with. It's like how do I explain what it is that I do? And how do I do it in only so many words, and how do I do it in no words? How do I do it in just images? And the trick, I guess is what you'd call it, that I arrived at is to tell a story. That's really, I think, the quickest way to explain what the experience is, build some hype, build some interest around it, and also let people know who you're for and who you're not for, is to just tell a story.
Storytelling is inherently difficult, though,
Hmm.
because we it's really interesting to me the ways in which we devalue story. It's in business, like we hold it up as this ideal, but when people tell their stories, we're like, no, no, not that story. I don't
Yeah.
actually want to hear that story.
Hmm. Well, and I, so I had this what I think was a brilliant idea over the weekend. So, Clay and I got together and wanted to release some merch over the weekend, some new designs and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, we're going to do the typical, tank tops because it's summertime, it's getting hot, t shirts, got a front and a back design. We got a couple different ones. Some of them are based off designs that we already know sell really well, and they've kind of been tweaked to fit these products, blah, blah, blah. But I want to do something new. I want to do kind of a niche product that still fits the market, but not everybody's going to buy it. It's like a little higher dollar item, and I want it to relate back to the book and maybe even expand the world of the book a little bit. Take the book out of the book and put it into these other areas. And I came up with a jersey design, like the jersey shirts that are like all over printed. I was like, cool, I can do one of those. I can put the name of the main character on the back, the number 13, which appears throughout the book a lot. And so people that have read the book will get it. And then I'll do this cool design in the background. And we'll price them at like $45, which is more than a lot of people are willing to pay for a shirt. But for a jersey, people will be like, oh, that's a good deal.
Right. I'll pay a lot of money for a jersey with
Yeah,
my sports guy on it.
exactly,
So,
right? So I was thinking about that and I was like, okay, I could probably take a picture of this jersey, post it, and say, it's a jersey, buy it. And there would be people that would. It's like, or we can use the social graphics that we're doing to promote this to enhance the story more. Again, this is that design for a purpose thing, right? So I designed the jersey to appeal to people that have read the book and would spend that kind of cash on a kind of specialty product. And it has these little, things from the book in it, right? The second thing that I wanted to do, and this was with the social media post, was to dig into the lore a little bit. So it's not a jersey, it's a uniform. It is a uniform for the clan of the main character, and it's used to easily identify people that are in that clan. And so the way that the social media graphic was designed is it did have pictures of the jersey front and back because you want to show the product, obviously. But it looked like they were Polaroids and they were taped to like a manila folder. And it looked like it was a confidential, like, government document. It was like, nobody's supposed to see this. We got intel on this clan. Like, they wear these uniforms. They're sweat wicking because they use them when they shoot guns. And, like, that's a way to show features and benefits without bullet point, copy. And of course, like, we took it, we uploaded the design, we tested some shit, everything was good. And I was like, cool, post the social graphic. And everybody was like, this is fucking awesome. Like, I've got to buy one of these. And we sold a few like immediately. So yeah, storytelling. And you don't have to tell the entire story at once. I think that's where people kind of fuck up too, is they want to tell this, Odysseus length tale all at once. Like, you don't have to do it all at once. Hell, Days of Our Lives has been on for like 40 fucking years and they haven't got to the point yet. Like, you can stretch your story out. It's okay. I think you froze on me.
I have figured out what the problem is for. I'll try again. We'll see. How is it going? I have no bar. Okay. I think we're here now.
You're blurry, but
the
I can hear
issue
you.
is digital products. Okay. So it's that digital products have less of a story.
Mm-hmm.
What is fundamentally the same as everybody else's online course program, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, we're selling t-shirts and there's not that much that's different about t-shirts. It's probably one of the most oversaturated markets. So if I can come up with a story about a t-shirt you can come up with something about, your course or whatever. There is a story in there somewhere. There's a story as to why you created it. There's a story as to why you felt like it needed to exist. Whatever. It's there. You just need to dig it out. And before somebody says, "Oh, but it's not a shirt, it's a jersey," I did one for just a regular ass t-shirt that we did too. So, totally
Well,
different design.
and I think it's not about the course itself, right? It's the story behind why we are offering this thing, why this
Yeah.
thing is
Well,
important.
and we've heard, the term or the phrase rather, like people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. You know, similar thing.
Okay. So, how do we've talked a little bit about how people pull their story out, but do you have suggestions for getting to the good bits of a story? What makes people compelled to buy? I know this is uniquely, it
Yeah,
varies,
I
but
I heard a great fucking thing about storytelling the other day. So I have started a YouTube channel, and I said from the beginning I did not want to do bulk content, blah 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 blah. I wanted to show the way that I think about things, and if I can do 7 videos a week, that's awesome. If I do one every 7 months, that's awesome. I didn't care about like the schedule and blah blah blah. I was going to be consistent with showing my process when I could and filming stuff and doing this in an artistic way. But one of the things that you have to do in order to do that is to learn how to tell stories. And so I've been watching a lot of YouTubers that I think are really good at that. And one of the ones that I watch is Van Neistat. And if you know Casey Neistat, Van is his older brother. And I loved Casey's videos, like his snowboarding in New York City videos. To this day, one of my favorites. Um, but Van did a video about storytelling, and he said, and I will always remember this anytime that like I'm doing any sort of video is if the story doesn't have a surprise, it's a report.
mm,
Yeah, if there's not a surprise, it's a report. And he goes on to talk about Bert Kreischer, the comedian guy. He's telling this story about like when his daughter was in the hospital, and he's a good storyteller, and there's a big surprise at the end. His wife telling the same story is really fucking bad because she tells the surprise first and then tries to give all of these little details afterwards, and it's like a report. It's like, there's no build up, there's no hype, because if you leave the surprise at the end, you can squeeze all those little details in, which is what Van said, and he's right. If you've ever seen somebody that's a really good storyteller, it goes on forever, and they can tell you all these little details because you know that it's building to something. Bad storytellers are bad at it. So yeah, I think that's, if you look at any story, there's usually always a surprise. Maybe not a huge one, but like usually always like, oh, I didn't think that that's where that was going.
I recently subscribed to a Substack with whose name I can neither remember or like place in any way, but she's a narrative memoirist, and one of her rules is start in the middle. And
I've heard that before. Yeah.
that too, I think, is valuable. All good stories start in the middle and kind of wind their way through back and
Yeah.
forth.
Back.
And mhm.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree with that 100%.
So, how do we do that visually?
Yeah, so I think with this, going back to the jersey idea, it was a little different because I had source material to work from, right? And so this is, you could think about how I did this as it's in the future and you got more information, or we're retroactively saying this is the uniform for the character. It's however really you want to look at it. And this is kind of a world building thing too. Which I don't know how much I've talked about world building on this podcast. Like maybe that'll be an episode at some point. But um, this is a really important part to be able to tell stories. Is before you tell a story, you have to figure out where that story's set. You look at any movie, TV show, video game, fiction book, anything, they set the scene first and then they tell the story. You know where Lord of the Rings takes place. You know where Red Dead Redemption takes place. You know where Breaking Bad takes place. You know where Mad Men takes place and when, right? So
Right.
I think visually that's a huge part is setting a scene.
And when I think that's actually our next episode, and we'll just do
World building.
world building because there's a lot to plug into here, I think, in the visual elements. It, the I don't know if it'll ever be the same, right? But there used to be a subreddit about world building and a world building jerking subreddit because,
Yeah.
obviously, but the amount of effort that people spend on maps and background information for a
Yeah.
character that shows up on 2 pages of an 800-page novel
Mhm.
is significant. And it's this kind of stuff that if you did it for your personal brand would be like life altering.
Yeah. And I've had I'm pulling from my D&D experience. I've played a lot of D&D. I've DM'd a few times. There are times where I would create a character and they would have a full name, a backstory, everything, and we might never use it. It was just on the off chance that
Right.
somebody was like, let's fuck with this cashier. Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's fuck with the bartender. And I needed to have that just in case because every time that I didn't have it,
That's correct.
that was when I
That's
needed
correct.
all of those goddamn details. And I'm like,
That's correct.
like, like I'm trying to like figure it out as I go, and that's super stressful. And then I have to remember what it was that I said because now it's important and now it's like established lore, and it's a pain in the fucking ass. But like, yeah, my party's trying to like woo the catfish instead of cross the bridge, and it's like I can only make up so many names for this goddamn catfish. Will you please? Just, um, but yeah, I mean, and that's I don't even remember like exactly where we were going, but details and stuff like that they're very important, and it doesn't seem like something that you would want to completely think through, but like you kind of need to because if you do it under like duress, it's going to be horrible, right?
Yeah, it doesn't have the same energy to it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that I do think there's real value in a whole hour in picking through how you build those details into
Mm-hmm.
a business or a personal
Yeah,
brand.
and do you even need to?
Right.
Because this is the really fun part about world building is you might not have to.
You
Like
might not have to.
you might be able to let certain parts of it be up to the person experiencing it. Which is what some, if you look at books as a very popular example, that's what some books do. That's what some authors choose to do.
So the question I would ask is what makes the world building so compelling?
Yeah, I mean it's the same again going back to okay, when you read a story or somehow experience a story through whatever media, if it's a video game, if it's a book, if it's a TV show, whatever. Um what about that makes it compelling? Because the best way to learn to do this is look at media that you already consume and enjoy and figure out why do you like it. Like I'll give you an example. Breaking Bad is probably my favorite show, And it wasn't until I watched it like a couple of times that I realized one of the reasons that it's my favorite show. There are details that I did not pick up on until I'd probably watched it 3 or 4 times. The way that they foreshadow things. They'll foreshadow
Right.
stuff seasons in advance. And then you're like, "Oh, that's the fucking thing." And it's like 3 years later, you know? Um
Or a whole nother show later, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, or in the like the spinoffs and stuff they did in Better Call Saul or in El Camino or something like that, which are also fucking amazing. Red Dead Redemption 2 is hands down probably my favorite video game ever. I think it is the best video game ever made. Um, I've played I think I've spent probably close to 300 hours on that game, and I've never played the multiplayer. So this is just all campaign. Um, that game came out almost 6 years ago, and people are still finding new stuff in it. They're still finding stuff that they haven't found before. And it's, journal entries or, notes. I decided that I was going to 100% it, which is a chore, but I wanted to do it. And there was a million things that I saw in that game. I'd played through it 3 times before then and had never seen before. So attention to detail for me is a big thing that will 1000% win me over. Red Dead also has an incredibly sad story, and I would like to say, oh, but it has a happy ending, but it really doesn't. Like it gets your
I
hopes
don't
up
know
that it's
it.
a happy ending, but it doesn't. Um, yeah, the main character dies. A really not great
Spoilers.
death. Yeah, it came out 6 years ago. Like it's
What
still
is
worth
the
playing, but
limit
like I
on
can
spoilers? Yeah,
I feel like 6 years is safe.
probably,
You
probably.
know, but it's the way that it builds up to that is like he gets it's set in 1899, so it's a cowboy game. um but the way that it happens in game is you're riding through town and you start coughing and then you fall off your horse and you pass the fuck out and you're like, what is happening? Because you can't control it, you can't do anything about it. Like this is playing out, you're just kind of along for the ride. um and you end up going to the doctor and he looks at it and he's like, yeah, you've got tuberculosis, like sorry about your luck, because it was a death sentence back then. They didn't know what the fuck it was. They didn't even know how you contracted it, you know. And so you play out quite a bit of the game knowing he's going to die, because like you as the player, obviously tuberculosis is not something that you come back from back then. And so you have to play a pretty good chunk of that game knowing your character is going to die, and so how is that going to affect your choices? Because the way that everybody starts off in that game is you're a fucking gunslinging cowboy. Like you run around, you rob fucking trains, you shoot people, like it's fun, you're going hog wild. And then when this happens, you kind of start to change your decisions a little bit. You start like helping random strangers on the side of the road, like trying to be a good person and stuff, because you're in a gang, you're not a good person. And it's this constant back and forth of like, are you a good person or a bad person? Like, are you a bad person that does good things, or are you a good person that does some shitty things? Like, yeah, I've
Nuance.
never yeah, and I had never, especially in a video game, but really in any type of media, a book or anything like that, had the self-awareness that it had, because there's a lot of narratives that play out. There's a lot of characters in the game. Um, and you get frustrated with some of those characters at the same time that the character you're playing is frustrated with them. I remember the first time playing through, like one of the characters in the game's like, no, we just need to do this, and I've got a plan, and blah 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 blah. And you've heard this about 50 times at this point, and shit keeps going wrong. And so at this point, you're kind of like, do you have a plan though? Like, do we know what's going on? And I remember out loud, like during the cutscene, hearing it, and I'm like, oh my god, I don't want to hear this shit anymore. Like, I'm frustrated with this character. As I say that, the character that I'm playing is like, I think I've heard this all before. This didn't go well. And I remember thinking, like, oh my God, how did it know? Like, how did it know I was frustrated with it? And that happens throughout the game. I just never seen something that was so aware of the player's emotions and could track it. It was mind blowing to me. I went off on this huge tangent just then about how
You
fucking
did, but it is
incredible Red Dead
relevant
is.
in that being able to articulate your buyer's
Mhm.
emotions is instrumental in getting them to buy more things.
2 times I've bought this game.
Right.
I bought it on Xbox and then bought it on PC when it came out on PC. I'm not even kidding. Actually, I bought it 3 times. I bought a copy for a friend of mine. Anytime it goes on sale, I want to buy it again just because I appreciated the game so much. I'm like, here, you deserve it.
And that's what good storytelling does.
Yeah, that's incredible next level storytelling. And if you look at me, the player as the buyer, I actually had a whole offer around this that I never got to like actually put out. I don't know why, because like I finished all the content and stuff for it, and then I don't know if I got busy or like what happened, but I never put it out. But I still have it, but I'll have to dig it up. It was called Press W, but it was basically how to it was brand building. World building was a part of it, but it was brand building and kind of using inspiration from video games and stuff like that in the different parts of building a business. And I think Red Dead is actually what I used for storytelling. With world building, I used Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings to describe. There's two different types to describe that. In market research, I used Rainbow Six Siege, which is a very popular. It's a very tactical shooter. You have to go and research, and you don't just run in and start blasting. Like there's setup to it, stuff like that. So but what I was getting at, if you look at the player of a video game as the buyer, as your customer or client, and then the game that they're playing as your brand. If your brain works like that, that might be easier to start to comprehend. It's like, okay, what are these different parts of a video game that I like, and like how do I flesh that out for myself? Or a movie that you like, and your buyer's the person watching the movie, or a TV show, or whatever works. For me, it would be video games, but
Yeah. And so next time we'll talk about building the stage and setting the world and
mhm.
how you flesh all of that stuff out and why the story matters.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Okay.
world building is it's not something that I talk about a ton. It was a part of Brandwild, the offer Brandwild, and I think I think it's something that's really important. I'm not saying that I came up with world building. That's ridiculous. I definitely like can't take credit for that. I don't hear people talk about it as it relates to branding.
No, I don't either, and I'm looking forward to
I
digging into that.
Yeah, I think I might be able to like lay some claim to fame and be like, I might be the first person that figures this out. I at least arrived at it independently. I've never searched like brand world building or anything like that. So there might be stuff out there that exists. I have no idea, but this is all just stuff that I've kind of learned and realized. So
Well, I am looking forward to it. Y'all, that'll be in 2 weeks.
mhm.
Thank you so much for being here,
Thank
Haley.
you.
And what are we doing right now for folks?
Oh, like services.
Offer
So
wise,
yeah,
yes. What are we doing?
the typical like core design package that I always offer and always will, which is or the core package I should say, it's strategy and design. So you can do either or if you bundle them together, you get a little bit of a discount. So there's that, and then I'm always open to some creative partnership opportunities if you need some maybe high level thinking and creative brain stuff. I'm open to talk about that, and yeah. And I started a YouTube channel, so go check out my YouTube. If you just search Haley Shane, it should come up.
All right, y'all. Thanks for being here today. We will see you next time for World building. I'm very
World
excited.
building.
It's gonna be
Yeah.
fun.